So what does it look like at Spotify, and how is that investment materialized? And then most importantly, talk about operating in the open. And since Spotify has open sourced the project, really how the community has taken hold of the project and started to drive it forward. So the before times, really this is the landscape in the context that we were coming from. One, we were growing really quickly. So many new joiners all the time. Two, we were myopically focused on speed to market. So for us in the audio space, we really believed, especially then and even still now, that a lot of our differentiation comes in our ability to test and iterate to find product market fit and to scale our customer base across the Spotify applications and properties. So it's all about speed for us, and that I think is just really important as you think about why we're so invested in Backstage. And then last, we really were struggling to keep developers effective, and frankly we were struggling to even know if developers were effective because we didn't really have a great way of measuring that. So these were kind of the three sort of contextually valid things, or valuable things, excuse me, to sort of paint the picture of where Backstage is coming from. So there were two things in particular that I want to really underline as the core problems behind Backstage, and I think this picture helps bring them to light. The first is we have this sort of this hiker who's reaching up and asking for help to sort of help to summit the mountain, and that is who I visualize as these new joiners coming into Spotify, who are effectively saying, hey, the onboarding documentation isn't great. I have no idea what my team owns. I can't find any information on anything. And so they're reaching out to these existing Spotifyers and essentially saying, hey, can you help me along? Because I can't find my way myself, and I need some help because we frankly just didn't have good tools or information available to do that. And then the second is from the perspective of the person reaching around and saying, hey, let me help you along. And that really materialized as context switching. So we had these existing engineers who we were trying to, of course, supplement the teams around them, but they were spending so much time context switching, trying to actually be productive, deliver value from a code perspective or from an architectural perspective, but also, of course, helping their teammates to onboard. So we had this sort of really lag in onboarding time because people couldn't find things. And then the existing teams were really struggling with context switching, and that just created this horrible cycle and really a huge damper on productivity. And it turns out our ecosystem was pretty chaotic and fragmented, so it's not unreasonable that it was hard to make sense of, and there really wasn't out building up this conceptual model or mental map of what the technology ecosystem looked like within Spotify. You were really sort of dependent on somebody to show you the way and show you where things were and what things were relevant. And this image is just meant to visualize that sort of in a build, where in the middle we have at a moment in time the existing just microservice ecosystem that's running within Spotify. That's of course wrapped with tons of tools that either we've built, third-party providers have built, cloud providers, all kinds of tools and infrastructure that's available. And then on the right side is really just tools that we've built or tools that we've extended or rely on from a developer perspective. So there was this really sort of chaotic and fragmented ecosystem of actual code and software that delivered value to Spotify customers. And then there were all these tools and technologies that really facilitated the creation and scaling of that software. But it was really hard to wrap your head around at the beginning. And so we set out to really prioritize developers and their software. So I really want to underline that phrase, or I guess change the color of it to make it pop out here. For us, Backstage was all about prioritizing developers. It wasn't about prioritizing a tool. It wasn't about the technology. It was all about saying, okay, what are the actual things that developers are trying to do, and how do we optimize for their ability to create the software that they care about, not to scaffold new services, not to figure out which technologies can help them solve this problem or what things are being used within Spotify, but really to optimize for their ability to ship products faster and write the code that they actually care about writing, not all the boilerplate around it. And the belief was that would help us to deliver the most effective developer experience possible. And so Backstage really sits at the center of these three desires. So one, move really quickly, which I think I've probably said 3 or 4 times already, but really all about cycle time. Next, how do we scale? So how do we make sure that as we add and grow the number of developers contributing in the ecosystem, we don't actually get slower? So speed and scale hand in hand. And then lastly is just chaos control. So how do we make sure that yes, we're not just, you know, sort of flying by the seat of our pants, and we actually have clear countermeasures to make sure that people can move really quickly, and we can do that at scale, but we can do that in a way that's safe for our users. And so Backstage is really intended to sit at this intersection point, and we really believed if we could kind of take these 3 different sort of counterintuitive, competing almost frames and build a system to sort of unify them or allow you to optimize for those 3 things. That really is this realization of developer effectiveness. So what does that actually look like at Spotify, and what is it like with Backstage today? So taking this problem statement of how do we prioritize developers and their software, we essentially said, okay, let's think about these core jobs to be done that a developer actually has. So what are the core things that they are trying to do day in and day out, and not, you know, what are the tools that they need to have access to, or what are the different the systems or vendors or whatever that they should be thinking about. Really just what are the jobs that they're actually trying to solve. So we spent a lot of time iterating on these and landed on create, manage, and explore. So create is most clearly visualized, and this is just a number of templates that are out there. So at any point in time, based on all the recommended technologies and best practices, we have all of these different scaffolded or cookie cutter templates. And so these simply just allow you to ignore the boilerplate and underlying infrastructure if you want to. Of course, you can dig into all of it. Any engineer can modify these templates should they need to. And they can also deal with and mess with all the software under the hood as well, or the infrastructure under the hood if they need to tweak it. But we've tried to provide safe defaults for basically a large set of archetypes of essentially systems that people want to create or components that they want to create. And Leo will go into this in all of these in more detail. So next is manage. So here you see, this is essentially kind of the home page, if you will, for most developers or even engineering managers or product managers within Spotify. So they come in, and this is just sort of at the top, you'll see there's a bunch of things that have been elevated here. Like, hey, none of these things are good. Like, good morning, Austin, but you should be looking at these things. So how are you doing from a test perspective? How are you doing from a cloud cost perspective? What things can we elevate in context when you're already thinking about your systems, when you're in this space of like, what software do I own? What does my squad own? Or what do my squads own? And where are the places that I should optimize? What are the things I should be thinking about? So again, allowing you to manage all of your software in one place. And this is everything from your microservices to your websites, your data endpoints, your mobile features, all of that within one place with a clear prioritization of like, these are the things that are broken and you should be thinking about, or don't worry about cloud cost. It's not a big deal. You don't have any problems. So just focus on, not something to worry about today. And then last is explore, and this all came down to discoverability for us. And this is I would say the place that we're investing a ton right now internally on evolving and of course contributing all of those learnings and design research back to the open source. And how do we really optimize as much as we can for discovery and create this ability to search across the technology ecosystem of an organization in a really, really user-centric way. And so today we've done a number of things to try and not only give developers who may want to use a tool to solve a problem access to what those tools are and have a really high bar for documentation or demos and all sorts of things for these internal things. But we've also given basically a path to market, if you will, or we've given a way to access the developers within Spotify to teams building these platforms. And we've effectively said, hey, here's what a really good platform looks like from a developer experience perspective. And here are templates that you can use to kind of advertise, if you will, your platform and give others the ability to use it really seamlessly. So it's sort of that balance is all Backstage is trying to strike. It's trying to create these really good incentives for the creators or builders of reusable software, and then also trying to optimize for the consumers of that software and make sure that we can, as much as possible, create a really valuable marketplace there. And fortunately, teams have put everything in Backstage at Spotify. So this was sort of this streak of luck, if you will. We were able to really invest in a number of things. There was a lot of marketing done internally. There was all kind of incentives put in place, mostly in the form of stickers, to get people to contribute back to Backstage, to get people to extend Backstage as a platform, but also build plugins into it. And Lee will talk again more about that contributor and extender persona, as well as the actual end user of Backstage, or sort of the person who goes there to create or manage or explore the software ecosystem. And it's honestly taken off, and these are numbers that we're just super proud of in terms of satisfaction and people loving Backstage. It's continuing to bump up there. But I think the second two numbers are perhaps most important, where it's been a really small team within Spotify who's kind of running Backstage for Spotify. And we're seeing that. Of course, different companies take different approaches, but we've seen this model of having a small core team kind of owning and running the actual Backstage implementation that a company needs, which I think it's a fairly simple thing to get up and running, but there are nuances to making sure that it's optimized for the unique needs of your company. And so we're seeing these small teams, these small core teams, as we've done within Spotify, really create or enable others from across the company to contribute into it. So we're seeing over 80% of our contributions to Backstage coming from outside the core team, and that's building plugins, extending the platform, advertising the reusable tools that they're building within Backstage, kind of all of that coming from across the whole organization, which I guess sometimes can feel like an organism. And then lastly, operating in the open. So March of last year was a horrible month in many ways across the world, but it was when Backstage, just before everything went crazy, at least in the US, it was just before that Backstage was open source, and it was basically open sourced on a belief that there was a gap in the open source landscape, and we believe that Backstage may have value to other companies. And so we kind of had this idea that, hey, at least within Spotify, there's kind of these three touch points for developers, and maybe this will resonate with other companies. Who knows? Maybe this is something that other people can build on. And the community response has just exploded and been much more than we definitely imagined at least a year ago. And so, obviously stars are one thing, but I think they're, to me, they're just validation that others have the same problems that we did. So a star to me is, I consider it it's sort of an internet point, but it's also just validation of the underlying problem statement here, that developer effectiveness is important, and this is a tool that can help you achieve that for, again, the unique needs of your company. Now, we've also seen an explosion in contributors, which is fantastic. These are code contributors, but even more importantly, we're very focused on sort of end user contributions. So how can we bring the community together? How can we put companies that are trying to solve similar problems in the same room and connect them and really create this ecosystem around Backstage that can push the bounds of the problems that we can solve? And then, of course, companies from an adoption perspective, we've worked with hundreds to basically look at, understand, and stand up Backstage. We have, at this point, just over 30 public adopters. So these are companies that come out, either give talks about Backstage already, or want to otherwise publicly advertise that they're using Backstage. And of course, in the Discord community, you can talk to many more than these 30, as there's many developers standing up Backstage within their company. And this is I guess the graph that kind of keeps me going and is the most motivating, where we're really just seeing this continued growth and acceleration of contributions. And so incredibly excited to keep growing a really healthy and scalable community around Backstage and continue to work together to push the bounds of developer effectiveness. And with that, I will turn it over to Lee to show you how it's done. And again, as we're going through all this, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat and we'll get through to them at the end. Over to you, Lee.
Cool, thanks, Austin. So, welcome to Backstage. This is a Backstage instance that I cloned a little over an hour ago down to my laptop. I ran a build of the code base, and basically I've run a yarn start. I've run a command to spool up Backstage. I've not done anything else. So what we're looking at is what you will get out of the box if you go to our GitHub repository and pull down the code base. So what I'd like to do is I want to run through particularly those three areas that Austin was talking about: the create, the manage, and the explore. And to kind of illustrate what it's like picking up Backstage and kind of jumping into it and how it can help, I'm going to do it as though I'm an engineer joining my team at Spotify, to go through that kind of onboarding experience, if you will, with the software, and just kind of show a couple of aspects around that create, manage, explore, those themes there, to see how Backstage can be helpful. So, new starter to my team. My team has told me to come to Backstage. That's where kind of all the information is. Just jump in and find out kind of what we do and how Backstage kind of works. So that's the context that my team's given me. So upon landing on Backstage, I'm dropped into the software catalog. I can see this lists every service that we have at the company. I can filter by some things. So I could say, just show me the websites or something. I've got a few fillers and bits and pieces down the side. I've also got this menu bar here. So I can see there's a few different kind of tools, something around APIs that we can take a look at after, documentation. I can see explore, and then a few other bits of tools. But where I want to start, so my team owns Backstage. I want to go and find out more about Backstage itself. So I can see here in the service catalog, we've got Backstage. It's owned by user guest. I'm going to pretend that's my team name. I can see it's a website, it's in production, and it's at Backstage.io. So that must be this website here. So let's take a look at the Backstage.io website in Backstage. Saying Backstage too many times, this is getting too meta. So clicking into it, okay, I get an overview. I can see a few bits of information about about the service that my team owns. I can see the languages that are included and the percentages. I can see some recent GitHub workflows that have run against it. I can see some releases that we've got, pull requests, average time 21 hours to merge. Okay, merge to close ratio 95%. And I can see some documentation around it. Okay, what else have we got across the top here? So let's click on CI/CD. Okay, I get some information about some recent workflow runs. I can click in. I can click to see the workflow on GitHub, it looks like. I can triage. I get some different kind of statuses of where it is. I can even see the job log. That's pretty cool. So I can jump in and debug anything to do with the run. That's pretty cool. What does this give me if I click on workflows in GitHub? Okay, it takes me through to the actual workflows in GitHub, and I can dive deeper, some dependabot information. Okay, I can rerun things over here. That's cool. What else have we got across the top? I can see we've got some documentation. That's pretty cool. I can take a look at the overview of the service here. Nicely presented, a few pictures, diagrams, bits and pieces. Getting started, that's going to be useful for me. So I can jump in and I can see how I can create an app. I can see how I run it locally. Okay, cool. So some documentation in the same place. And let's have a look at pull requests. Oh, pretty cool. Okay, so I can see here, we've got some of the maintainers. These are some of my teammates doing some contribution, and I can click into it and it takes me through to GitHub. Okay, and I can see what's going on there. So this is the explore aspect of me again. I'm coming back to me, no longer the new starter. this is some of the explore aspects of Backstage. So one thing there's a couple of things going on here. One thing that's really important for me working with Backstage and being one of the leads taking it forward is the context. So the thing that makes the catalog really, really powerful is, yes, it gives you all of the different services that are there. So that's like problem one, inventory. You can see everything across your organization. Ownership, you can see who owns that. So it cuts down on that time of what have we got and who owns it, who do I need to contact. I can just come in here. Let's say I want to look at artist lookup. Oh, I can see it's owned by team A. Let's click on that. That gives me who's in that team, how I can reach out to them, what other things that they own. So it's super powerful from that kind of inventory aspect, if you will. The second is the context. All of the things in one place. So I can come here and I know that I can find documentation about it. I can find any of these kind of things across the top. Now, some of these as you check them out from GitHub aren't connected. So if we go to Lighthouse, there's nothing there, but there are instructions how to set that up and connect it for Backstage as part of the repository. It's just I've not done that in this demo. But you can see how I can quickly go from what's a service into, for example, CI/CD. I can quickly go into pull requests. I can quickly go into documentation. So the context is there. I'm not having to switch from, I'm looking at the service, now I'm going over here, I'm looking at CI/CD, I'm having to filter through all of these different services, find my service again, and so on. It's just here, all in one place. The third powerful thing that I really like about this comes not just with the service catalog or with the Explorer aspects, but with Backstage in general. And that's the plugin model. Each one of these tabs across the top here, and each one of these down the side here is a different plugin or tool. And what that gives me, as Austin mentioned, at Spotify, the Backstage core team that looks after Backstage varies in size, but it's always between 4 or 6 team members. And the reason that we can do that is the plugin model. What we do is we create the Backstage framework, if you will, the glue, the APIs that people can interact with and pass communication between all of the different plugins. We create that. We create really helpful tooling to create things within Backstage. And then we send that out. So what you find, we're looking at the CI/CD plugin right now. This CI/CD plugin is not owned by the Backstage team. It's owned by our CI/CD team at Spotify. They're the experts in CI/CD. They can provide the tooling to support CI/CD for everybody, and we know they're going to make the best tooling. They know way more about CI/CD than the Backstage core team does. And that goes the same for any of these items across the top. And these you can mix and match. You can set them up so that your Backstage instance for your organization is customized to just your needs. But for me, CI/CD is owned by that team. Pull request is owned by a different team. Documentation is owned by our documentation team. They're the experts. And to make it clean and simple for the engineers, it's all done through GitHub code owners that we use inside of Spotify. It could be done the same for your organization or using GitLab or any of the other alternatives. So back to the new Spotify. So I found out a bunch of information about Backstage. That's awesome. And I can see there's other bits of tools. Well, I'll come back to them in a little bit. What I'm really interested in, now I've got a feel for Backstage, I want to create something. Let's go make something. Let's see if we can make a service or a component ourselves. I was told I could do it in here and it would be really straightforward. So I can see this create button. Let's click on that. Coming into here, these are our software templates. So software templates, think of them as cookie cutter templates. I can never say that first time. So the power of templates are twofold. One, it standardizes. So it means that when someone goes to create a new web service, let's say I want to create a React SSR service or component. When I create that, every different person that creates one, they get the same base template. So it's a way to roll out standardization without making it cumbersome for the engineers, for the contributors. The other benefit of using software templates is you can build best practices in. Just like plugins, the teams who know best, the team that knows the best about React SSR, they can own this template and they can create it. And then the community at your organization can contribute to it to make it better. It means you get best practices built in every time you create a new component or new service. And for a new starter like me, that's fantastic. The other aspects, you can build other things in. So you could build in, for example, if you have GDPR requirements, you could build in security requirements. All of these things that basically could get missed when you spool up a new service. Could be, very complex to set up and require lots of documentation and knowledge and maybe tribal knowledge, etc. They come out of the box. So you know that a new person joining a team or the experienced engineer who just wants to get that component created and then get to the fun stuff of making, like building the content of that component, really solving their users' problems. They can get to that. Templates makes it super easy. So let's create something. Let's do this live. I've prayed to the demo gods. We should be good. So I'm going to create a new service, and I'm going to call this my GCP plugin. And I'm just going to copy that name for a second because I'll need it in a second. It's a demo, so I'm just going to leave the description at that. Who's the owner? Oh, I can't even spell my own name anymore. I'm the owner, and store path. We're using GitHub at Spotify, so that's what I'm just going to use for this demo. And I'm going to put it into my personal GitHub account because I don't want to annoy my real team. Okay, so component, my GCP plugin, I've called it. It's just a demo. It's owned by me, and it goes to my personal account. Okay, click create. So this is the really powerful bit. Software templates is going away, pulling in some templates that my organization has already defined, and then starting to build out that, oh, I've run out of time. It built it. It was too fast. It goes and takes those templates. It creates a base project for you, and then publishes that to GitHub, registers it in Backstage against all of the different plugins and everything else that are already connected up. Meaning, as an engineer, I can then go in and build the fun stuff, solve my users' problems. So I've been given 2 links. Let's take a look. So I've got this repo link. Okay, that just takes me out to GitHub. I can see it's created this repo. It's got a basic description there. We have I clicked the wrong thing. And we have a scaffolded app. So it's put, again, you can bake in all of your best practices. It does this and effectively acts as a blank canvas. I can go in here and I can jump into main here and building this really cool plugin for whatever it is that I want this plugin to do. But all the kind of the configuring things, setting things up is all done for me. The other link, if I click open in catalog, it's going to take me to the service catalog that we were just looking at. And as you can see, it's created it and put everything in one place. So I've got a description, I've got who owns it, workflows, I've got the README, the languages, just as we had before. Going looking at CI/CD, I can see there's been one, the initial commit. I can see status of completed. I can see that it's run through all of these different steps. And again, there's the job log for it. So it's done everything for me. There'll be no pull request against it right now. There's an empty docs folder. When it's an empty docs folder and there's no documentation, you get I think it's a drop the mic. There we go. The mic screen. But I can start filling that documentation folder with docs and they will appear. Awesome. This is pretty cool. So, and the last thing to point out, I suppose, in here, my GCP plugin. You can see already registered, already connected up to everything else. So that's a little bit around explore, create. What about manage? I'm feeling brave. I feel like I've learned a lot. I've read some stuff around my components and I've learned a little bit about Backstage. I've created now my own service within Backstage. What happens when I want to manage that service? What happens if I want to build something really unique for that service? If I wanted to build, I don't know, a Kubernetes plugin so I could see the status of the clusters that my server GCP plugin is running in. Well, I would presume there'll be some documentation for that somewhere. So I'm guessing it's going to be in the general Backstage documentation. So I'm going to go over there. Oh yeah, I can see there's a plugins folder, intro, existing, creating a Backstage plugin. Okay, to create a new Backstage plugin, yada, 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 drop into my Backstage instance on the command line and run this command. Okay, I can do that. So I'm going to jump across here to my terminal. It was yarn create plugin. Uh-oh, I need to be in the right folder. That would help. Yarn create plugin. Here we go. Okay, enter an ID for the plugin. So I'm just going to call this my first. Actually, let's do my first plugin. Go. Enter the owners of the plugin if specified or if. So I'm going to skip. Okay, so now this is going away and it's creating my plugin. Now, while it's doing that, let's just take a quick look at what else I can see. I haven't looked at anything on the sidebar yet. So I can see we've got something called APIs. APIs, again, just like any other plugin, just another tool that is there for you. Ooh, Spotify APIs. Have a look at some of these. Okay, so I can find all the different information around the APIs, and it gives me, yeah, it gives me all the details. So we can jump in and document all of our APIs, which is pretty cool. Again, in one place, putting them under a search and making it so that everything's easy to find. That's quite cool. Documentation we've already looked at. Explore. Okay, yeah, just the different domains and things like that in here. That's pretty cool. Create, we've done. Tech Radar is built out of the box, so you get this for free. I can also see there's a Lighthouse plugin. Cost Insights. Now, jumping away from the newbie, the Spotify newbie, this is actually one of my favorite plugins. This gives me an overview of all of the costs from all of the components and services that my teams own. And as an engineering manager, this is one of two places that I just live in Backstage. How do we reduce those costs and do more and all of that type of stuff? Really cool, very intuitive, fairly straightforward to hook up to all the different services and things that you have. And I can see we've got a graphical interface for interacting there. Now, how's my plugin doing? It's completed. Awesome. Right. So my first plugin, I'm going to take the title. Okay. Now, how do I find where it's created that? So back to the docs, plugins, create a Backstage plugin. Let's scroll down. Okay. Go to your Backstage instance and then just slash your plugin. Okay, let's do that. Go up here, my first plugin. Okay, here we go. So over the course of about 15 minutes, we've created a component. We found all the information that I needed as a newbie to get started with my services. We've taken a look at those services. We've seen some workflows, so we've been able to do kind of, gist of what's going on. And now we've also been able to create a plugin. When you create a plugin, it creates a default template, just like the software templates. And we put some hopefully useful components and things in there, just so you can see how it's put together. And as an engineer, I can explore the code and find out like where everything is, just to help you get started. But effectively, it's a blank canvas. I can now build some awesome tooling in this plugin that will help me manage and maintain the service that I've just created about 5 or 10 minutes ago. And this plugin I can share with the rest of the organization. Maybe it's something awesome like the CI/CD that we looked at, or PRs or things like that. Something that's going to be really useful for everybody else. And again, I've just done all of this in about 15 minutes. So that's a little bit about Backstage for open source. the last thing I wanted to show, and then we'll jump over to some questions, was what does all this look like after about 4 to 5 years? Well, this is Backstage for Spotify. This is the instance that runs inside of Spotify right now. There's a few differences, a few things that have evolved. And of course, there's a lot more plugins right now because we've been doing it for a few years. But where you land when you land on the internal, we've made ourselves a homepage. On this homepage, we just try to bubble up all of the relevant information for the user that's logged into Backstage. So for me, I get, some recently visited things. I get some favorites. I've got a toolbox of different things, so I can look at general stuff, general things related to data, and it gives me links out to all of these kind of aspects. I've got a couple of widgets. I've got some news and updates and things going on down here. Over on the left, we have shortcuts. Shortcuts basically just allows you to pin pages that you go to often in at that top level to help you get there quicker. So of course, I've pinned Backstage. This is the internal version of Backstage that's running, and this is me monitoring that internal version. You can see I get the overview page, something very similar to what we just looked at, just with a bit more information. I get, details about who owns what, who the product manager is, who the tech owner is. I get some service advisory indicators, cost efficiency, dependencies. I even get PagerDuty down at the bottom, so I can see who's on call right now for these services and who's backup. So that's the overview page. The plugins in the open source that we had across the top, internally, we just style them differently. We put them down the side. But again, you can see, CI/CD. This will take us to our internal CI/CD plugin, owned by a different team. Again, the CI/CD team, not the Backstage team, as are all of these plugins down the side. I could go into tests. We could look at tests and look at those type of things. The second place where I spend most of my time at Backstage for Spotify is manage. So with manage, all we've done is we've bubbled up all of that different information into one place. So for me, that puts it in the context of all of the squads that I work with as an engineering manager. I can see that gives me 115 components and across 30 different projects. I can see, again, cost insights, security issues. I love that being 0. Incidents over the past 218 days since our last one. I'm quite happy with that. Cycle times. I get a breakdown of all of these components into services, websites, and things. I get some migrations and upgrades information. This is our Tech Insights plugin. This isn't in open source just yet, but effectively, it's a way for teams to kind of communicate, hey, we've got a GKE migration going on. Have you done your things? And I can click into this, find more information for my specific services. Could be the Bionic upgrades we've just done, Java 11. Like these can be registered, and it's another way of just nudging people to kind of progress on these types of things. I can also see different things like here we've got data endpoints. Again, owned by different teams. These are all owned by the data teams, the data tribes at Spotify, not by us. But again, putting it in context, I was looking at Backstage. I was looking at the Backstage squads. I can now find information around the data pipelines, the data workflows, all of those types of things for my Backstage squads. And it gives me all of that information up at a high level, and I can dive in as much as I need. So that's a little bit about Backstage open source, a little bit about Backstage at Spotify. You can find out way more information, if I could find the tab that I was looking for, over on the Backstage IO site. Those docs we were just looking at in Backstage open source, they all live here too, up on this site. And you can find out things like what plugins are out in the community right now, what's been created, who's it been created by, why is it there. You can hook these all up into your open source instance of Backstage right now. And then, of course, there's links out to our Discord chat. There's links out to the GitHub repository and everything up there too.